On today's episode of Screenblend, we have a look at the Fast and the Furious franchise. Which ones are good, which ones are bad, and what's been retconned, and what order should you watch them in? And also, we have a look at Netflix's new movie, Extraction, starring Chris Hemsworth and produced by the Russo brothers. Enjoy. And that's why we're back here with Screenblend, everybody. Episode 6, is it, Mace? Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. So episode 6 of Screenblend podcast, where we go through and have a deep dive look into everything, movies, TVs, and games. I'm joined, as I said before, by my favorite co-host, Jack Mason. How are you today, Mace? Looks like you've got a new setup there for our visual watchers. Is that a new setup you've got?
I do. Yeah, I got a Focusrite microphone, pop filter. Yeah, I've got the works.
Oh,
yeah, I'm ready to start my professional podcast life.
Yeah, a little subtle plug there to the guys. There, finally, you've got that. I've gone with a little bit of a different mic setup today. Also, trying a couple of different things. So if the audio's a little different, everyone, hopefully it's better for you.
A little better, yeah.
A little better for you. And we'll go from there, recording this podcast. What day is it today, mate? So it's Monday.
That's a good question. I don't know. Monday.
April. That's the thing at the moment. I have no idea what day it is half the time now. And then every day is a Saturday, every day is a Wednesday. So today's episode, Mace, we are looking into, as always, we're going to go into the news a little bit. And then at the end of the show, look into what we've been watching, reading, etc. But no, today's episode is about the Fast and the Furious franchise. We're not going to just go into like all the movies and sort of break it down, go, here's our top. We'll have a little bit of a chat. But I think the Fast and the Furious franchise, and we'll go into it a little bit later, is a really interesting franchise starting back in 2001. And then the next movie now has just been delayed by a year. But I reckon they're two completely different franchises from the start to the end now, and how media has grown it. But, Mace, first, we'll get into the news. And, God, I just love your setup. It's a great setup, Jack.
Oh, cheers, mate. Cheers.
What's in the news today?
So, first up for news, coming off Mission Impossible from a couple of weeks ago. Mission Impossible looking to scrap Italy altogether for their filming. They started filming in Venice just before the coronavirus, and they had to postpone that. But due to how Italy doesn't seem to be getting any better with the corona, they're thinking, well, let's just scrap Venice and Italy altogether.
Yep.
And let's rewrite the script and just choose a safer location. Otherwise, filming's just going to be delayed too long.
That's an interesting point. I think that is fair, and we're going to find a lot of that in the next few months, where production, I think, of international stuff will halt, and they might be the first ones to do it. And I feel like whether we go back to more sound stages, so someone like a Pinewood or something might be loving it because they'll be getting a lot more business. But I feel like the international stuff might go now. And rewriting of scripts, I'm sure Italy is not as important. They can rewrite the script and keep majority of it similar, just have a different location for what's going on. Pain in the ass, but I think that's what's going to happen.
So, and it's like, so many big actors as well, and 2 movies back to back. That would take them a year, maybe even just under 2 years to film and get ready. So you can't delay all those actors' schedules any longer than they have to. So that's probably a good idea.
So I think in the end, I was talking to my sister about similar stuff now, and she just thinks there's going to be more location-based regarding who the crew, etc. are. So instead of people flying over, all that sort of stuff, it's going to be more, if we're filming, let's say, because we're in Adelaide here, there's a couple of movies and TV shows in production. They're aiming to in a couple of months' time. It will be more just locally based people. They won't be getting people from Melbourne, Sydney, or internationally coming in. It will be more of a really niche domestic look into productions for the next time being anyway, while travel, and local actors, depending, may have more of a chance to be small roles in films than people flying everywhere, etc. So what's the next bit of news, Mace?
Yeah, so next bit of news, Universal have recently scored all the Lego rights. Whoa. So Universal Pictures and the Lego Group have sealed an exclusive 5-year deal so to develop, produce and distribute theatrical releases based on the intellectual property.
Yeah.
So Lego, have made their movies at Warner Brothers, Lego Batman movie and all that. So now they can go off a whole lot of different IPs now and produce as much content as they want, really, in the gaming world.
So with that deal, does that mean they still use they can still use the Batman characters, etc., or Like, where does that sit character-wise? Do we know yet?
I'm not precisely, but it does open up for a lot more of Universal Pictures rights. You know,
Okay,
like
yeah.
they've currently done Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
and especially in game format as well. But now they might be looking at using these IPs for larger productions like films and
Yeah.
whatnot.
I could see, like, then a Jurassic Park, Lego movie.
I could see that being a big hit with kids. To be
Well,
honest, I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
you just roll out exactly the same movie, basically, just make it Lego, and they'll sell millions of dollars of toys. I think that's an annoying option, but I feel like that's something that 100% will get done.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a big deal, and it'll just be interesting to see where they take that over the 5 years and
Yeah,
what intellectual property they want to do and how they produce it.
yeah,
That would be really interesting. And it's once again pretty light on news this week. Westworld season 4 is being
yeah,
renewed for TV shows, which is pretty big because season 3 is just coming to the
yeah.
end now, I think, of its third season. After that, though, I think that's most of the news I've been able to gather this week.
Well, I saw Brooklyn Nine-Nine has started writing
Awesome.
season 8. So for everyone's one of their favorite comedies at the moment that's bouncing around. I think, like we've been obviously saying for the last couple of weeks, the news sort of sphere has dropped down. A couple of Marvel movies have bounced around dates too. I think Doctor Strange and Thor might have switched, and that's just sort of drip feeding in every couple of days. There's something where things are moving 1 or 2 weeks here and there, or a month, just to work everything out. I think it's an interesting concept now, how everything's going. Things are changing. It's the world we live in today. That's all we can sort of do and cover in that respect. Nothing's really come out, and you're scouring the news sites and Twitter, but not much is really coming out. I know a lot of people are going back and looking at a lot of old things, trying to drum up a bit of news here and there, but really there's not much going on.
Yeah,
So
yeah. In terms of new content, like you said, a lot of it is people rehashing, and
yeah,
looking at old films and, finding bits and pieces from, trivia from a film or
yeah,
hints and secrets that they've never found before. And, doing a lot of actors are doing live streams and,
yeah,
watching their movies with their audiences. Like Pierce Brosnan did a live stream of GoldenEye the other
yeah,
day. And the kid from Jurassic Park did a live stream, I think, last
yeah.
night or the night before. So they're all kind of, the way of, the actors are getting amongst their movies and actually helping their audience understand it and watch it with them.
I think it's a good way to do it. I think the biggest thing is they just got to stay relevant. And for them,
Mm.
that's why they're doing a lot of this stuff. And I know James Gunn, like you said, has done a couple of those things too. He revealed a couple of secrets regarding Guardians 2, what everyone knows is one of my favorite Marvel movies. And yeah, so I think people, you got to stay relevant in these times. So they're bringing up a lot of that stuff. So it's always interesting, I think, how these stars stay relevant in the times, because they really don't have much going on. And it's good for us fans of media, because if you love GoldenEye, you get a little bit of a different intake into the movie in that way. But even games, there's nothing really on in the games world at the moment, nothing new there.
No, I mean, a lot for the most part, it's just really just waiting some time to see whether the next game gets delayed.
Yeah,
Because while games still are still lined up, similar to film, you've got some in July and
yeah,
August. It would just be probably in the coming months to see whether
yeah.
anything further gets delayed. But
That's
other than
fair.
that, yeah. And then you've got the big games conferences going digital, like we said last week
Yeah,
in June. So I guess we'll find out most of the gaming news come then.
from there. So now, Mace, moving into today's main topic and one of our favorite franchises and the world's favorite franchise, Fast and the Furious. So we're just going to sort of have a chat regarding, because for me, and I'd like the fans who are listening and interacting with us on all our various forms of social media. And where can people find you on social media, Jack?
Jack_Mason22 on Twitter and Insta.
Yeah.
And then I believe it's just Jackie Boys 22 if anyone wants to follow me on TikTok, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Your TikTok is actually very good. I'm enjoying some of your
Oh,
content.
thank you. Thank you, Will. Thank you.
So again, for me as will be Cuts on every form of social media, and then you can follow us at Screenblend also. But with the Fast and the Furious franchise, I'd like people, and I'm going to just put something on our Instagram story, is just give us, one sentence of what the Fast and the Furious franchise means to you, because I think for a lot of us growing up, obviously we were 93 born. The first one comes out in 2001. I think the first one I saw was probably around Tokyo Drift or they would have been out for a number of years. I might have been, 10, 11, 12, 13. But that franchise is so different from what it was in the early 90s to what it is now. That's correct, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I would describe it in one word as crazy.
Yeah.
Because, like we said, like we will say, it started off as, a movie all about racing and cars and a very basic plot line about an undercover agent trying to infiltrate, Vin Diesel's gang of, car thieves and trying to steal things. And come the eighth movie, these guys are not just chasing cars and stealing DVD players. These guys are driving alongside nuclear submarines and massive shootouts and huge explosions going on. So in terms of franchises, I think the Fast and the Furious has gone for a massive change across the 9 films, including the Hobbs and Shaw. It's gone from racing to probably one of the most outrageous action series of all time.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to read, and you sort of touched on it before, is so The Fast and the Furious 2001. This is a brief one-sentence synopsis of what the movie is. The Fast and the Furious follows Brian O'Connor, an undercover cop tasked with discovering the identities of a group of unknown automobile hijackers, led by Dominic Toretto. Now, the fate of the Furious. Let me find here. So this is the eighth one. The fate of the Furious follows Dominic Toretto, who has settled down with wife, Letty, until cyber terrorist Cypher coerces him to working for her and turns him against his team, forcing them to find Dom and take down Cypher. So automatically we've gone from car hijackers to cyber terrorists. In that, yes, a massive big gap. And when you go from that, even inside the cyber terrorists, we're going from now people taking control of every car in New York City to them just driving along a street. Now, when we look at the franchise, though, as a whole, so 8 movies plus the spin-offs that are slowly, so there's one spin-off at the moment being Hobbs and Shaw. Where does this franchise rank for you? Or just give me some words regarding when you say crazy. For me, is this what really cinema is like about in a way, like a popcorn movie? Is this like a definition of a popcorn movie for you, that you want crazy action, the story doesn't matter as much, but I'm just here for a cinematic experience? Because I still think this is a cinematic experience.
Oh, for sure. I think they've gone for the popcorn flick. I think from looking at the financials, I think after Fast 5, the 5th entry, where it did go more action orientated, I think they saw, a lot more money than what they got from the original and those first 3 films after that. So I think they've gone from a very niche audience of those people who want to watch it and watch fast cars race to just a massive popcorn flick.
So, because for me, I think the first couple didn't really resonate that much with me because I'm not a cars person. So whenever I'd watch them, I'd be at mates' houses that really like cars and that sort of stuff. And I'd watch them and be like, oh, I don't really get off on all these fast cars and, oh my God, they're driving this car now, yada, yada, yada. And so for me, that doesn't really bother me. Like I enjoy a bit of an action movie. But then when they start bringing in, so Fast 5 was 2011.
11.
Yeah. When that comes around, like you just said, it turns a car racing franchise into an action franchise. Now, you really have to retcon a lot of what's happened. And I think retcon is a favorite word of the Fast franchise because you die, you come back, decisions are made, movies are now changed in timelines. But you've sort of completely changed characters. Because for me, Dominic Toretto has gone from just a car driver who steals cars, etc., to now being effectively Superman. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the first movie, you feel like if he gets hurt, this might be the end of Dom. But come the later films, I don't think anything's going to stop him.
No, because I think the hardest thing for me is when we talk about the Fast franchise, is you remember set pieces, but you don't remember what movies they're a part of as much. So I think the problem is that you go, oh yeah, Statham's in this one. And you go, is it 6 or 7? Like, is he in 6 or 7? and then you're like, oh, maybe he's in both. Or which time was the one where they're jumping? I don't even know. It's like they're on a long road and there's a massive truck and someone falls out, or he like how many times does he catch Letty on the bonnet of his car, or like his hand?
Quite a few times, actually. Yeah.
You could probably do a ranking of what's the best catches of Letty on a car. But how many times
Next
can you
episode.
put your hand out and catch someone? And it's like you're going all at like 100 k's an hour. There is no way. And I know the whole point of this franchise is it takes away, and I'm a big advocate of it in some ways because I go, it's just over the top crap. And whenever I try and get dad to watch it, but I'm like, sometimes just make it like a little bit believable. Like, or is that too much
But
to
people
ask
keep
for?
coming back. It did start as grounded as you can get. 5 was even grounded with a lot of action, but 6,
Yeah.
7, 8 have just blown it out of the water.
I honestly think it must be one of the best writers' rooms to be a part of, because you'd sit there and you'll be like, you know what we should do? We should drive from one of the tallest buildings in the world into another one, and they make it. And you know what? Any other franchise, if that's Mission Impossible, they're just going, no, 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 no. Like, we have to have some form of realism. It's probably
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
It's probably all the ideas from a Mission Impossible franchise that have been cast to the side, and then the Fast and the Furious rooms like right next to them with like a cup against it, going, that would be great for us. Like, oh yeah, we'll take it. That would be great for us. Because some of the stuff they do, I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, I fucking love it. But it's so much.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
probably discussing number 10 now. They're thinking, has Dom been to the moon yet? Oh,
Yeah.
let's get a space shuttle. Let's try something.
Or we're both like two people. It's like someone else is driving. Who can get to space the first? Or I feel like if they got to space, they'd make some retcon in the world that going like the atmosphere is fine, so we don't have to put like they can just walk on the moon. Like they're
Oh,
not
they
in
can do what
any.
they want.
They could but they're like jumping. Like the atmosphere is fine, but the gravity's fucked, so they can still breathe. Or somehow
Space buggy races.
they'd create like one of those Star Wars things from like the first, like it's a Phantom Menace where they just put it in their mouth and they can like breathe underwater.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
and they'd put that on, and then they'd be like they could talk and they could just walk around on the moon. I'd be like, oh, for God's sake.
James
But
Bond did it. Why can't Fast and Furious?
so, but I think just this whole franchise, I think money wise and talking about it. So the change really happens at Fast 4 or the Fast and the Furious. So Fast 1 and 2, like you were saying before, quite grounded in the elements and the action. It's really a car racing film with cop beats in it.
Yeah, so do you just want to start
Yeah,
having a chat about number
yeah,
1? Because I've
yeah,
watched a lot of them again recently. I've watched the first 4 recently. And the first is, like you said, very different.
yeah,
But I would pitch it as one of my favorites just because I think the bond between Paul Walker and Vin Diesel is
yeah,
really strong. And I think what we learned from 2 and 3, as soon as you take Vin Diesel away from the franchise, it struggles.
yeah,
He very much grounded this as his franchise from the first one, even though he was absent for 2 and 3, I think. And, the fact that, it incorporates all the characters, it's a, really good start. And it's all about street racing. And then there's that main action piece at the end is essentially, I'm not sure if you remember this,
yeah,
is them racing against each other before a moving train hits both of them.
yeah,
They got to get past the track before the train gets them. Dom's car rolls over and Paul Walker lets Vin Diesel escape.
yeah.
And I'm not sure, upon watching these movies, I'm not sure if you've watched it recently enough, but what I've also noticed watching them is that Paul Walker and Vin Diesel's relationship, Toretto's relationship
Yeah.
across the film, isn't actually that well developed. And
Yeah.
same with his sister. They're kind of married and best almost family in number 5. Yet in number 1, Paul Walker leaves Toretto not on the best terms. He's found out he's a cop. They haven't really chatted and had,
They haven't
some
made
good
up
chats.
in a way.
They haven't really made up. He's just left because the cops are coming, and Paul Walker's let him go. He's given him his 10-second car.
Yeah.
But the relationship isn't really there. He's kind of formed it with his sister because they are kind of married and have a kid. Oh, not married, but in the 5th one. And then 2 movies go by and they're reunited again in the 4th for what essentially is the same story of them kind of coming together to work together.
Yeah.
Paul Walker's undercover again as an FBI agent this time. And even then, they actually don't share a whole lot of time together, until the very end where they have, that last action sequence of the caves where they kind of bond. And then he's kind of at the end of number 4, just called Fast Furious, just to confuse the audience over the Fast and the Furious. Yeah, he's just got his hands around Dom's sister, who he impregnates sometime between then and number 5. And just the story. They obviously have some D&Ms in between these films that the audience
all
doesn't
off
see.
screen, yeah.
Yeah, all off screen, because it's, I get that they're friends, but I just don't feel the screen time justifies the relationship they have from 5 onwards.
Yeah.
That's just my,
No, I think that's fair too, because from my memory, I remember I watched 4 back when it did come out, or like around the time. But it's a completely, like you said, that's why I think between 4 and 5, the franchise completely changes. And that's why they're sort of like, because like you're saying, there's no character development between, like there is character development, but I don't feel like they justify what they are in 5 from what's happened in 1 to 4. Like your point of saying, it doesn't make enough sense to me that they would be this close. And as everything, as Dom says, it's about family. It's family.
Exactly.
And I'm like, I feel like they've got worse. Like they're like an acquaintance. It's like it's acquaintances. It's like they're not family. Like I don't feel like they are brothers. I think, like you're saying, from 5, 6, 7, they feel like a family in that way. And I don't know whether that's again a tonal shift that the series goes on and moves in that way, but it's just a weird one. I just don't get it. Like,
I mean, we're all fine with it now because they do, the chemistry between those two work really well, and just watching 5 and onwards, they kind of confirm that they are good friends. But the background history of in those first 2 of 1 and 4 just isn't there for me. That's,
no, I think that's it. Yeah, I agree with you there. So we slide on. Are we wanting to go through sort of all of them, or I think you can sort of 2 for me just sort of connects into 1. Like you're saying, there's no Diesel. They did write 2 scripts, 1 with Diesel in, 1 with Diesel out. Diesel obviously wasn't there and didn't. So was there? I'm just trying to look again, going, what's the reason why? Far out. Diesel was offered 25 mil to return for the sequel.
Clearly.
However, he refused after reading the screenplay as he felt its potential was its potential was inferior compared to its predecessor. Rather, he chose to appear in everyone's favorite, The Chronicles of Riddick.
Oh, well, actually, that was a good decision on his behalf, I think. Yeah.
According to Variety magazine 2015, he was less taken with the screenwriters. He wasn't happy with the idea. What I think's fair, but 25 mil, I'm going to do a slide across and see if they say how much he got paid for Riddick, because
Riddick, I as a film, Riddick wasn't actually too bad in terms of his career. Riddick is actually one of his other big films. So he saved himself from a horrible Too Fast, Too Furious for a relatively alright action film.
And then one thing, sliding to now, Justin Lin actually has turned into be a very big and good director. But Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, this is, I think, and we're saying off camera beforehand, that I feel like this was peak 2006. Like, got to hit a different market. So this is probably even before, it didn't make even that much money, but I think the idea behind it was to make a lot of cash in a different market, especially Asia, and spin-off. So spin-off for games, spin-off for different forms of media, and to hit that sort of that point. Now, we look at this series, and this is obviously where Han comes into it, and then we work out that this movie's actually set after 5.
It's set after 5 and 6.
It's set after 6.
4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
Set up after. I guess it's in the future.
It's in the future. Yeah.
The third one is set between 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For God's sake. And I think the hardest thing to do with that is when you go back, and I've watched parts of the third, as in Tokyo Drift, you just go, again, they don't know at this point that they're going to set it. Like, they're not going to move it. When they're making it, they have no idea. But there's so much is retcon. So much of the just world is so 2006 or 2005, obviously, when they're filming it. And then it turns out, and you're just like, oh, God's sake. Like, it doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold up well for me.
No, I do think though Tokyo Drift is by far the most niche out of the whole franchise.
Mm.
It is dedicated for those people who love a good racing movie,
Yeah,
love their cars, and if you love Tokyo Drift, a lot of fans aren't really happy with how the rest of the franchise has turned out because it
yeah,
has gone to action.
yeah,
But if you're a fan of Tokyo Drift and you love racing, this is your movie. Can't say the rest. I can't say it the same for the rest of the franchise.
yeah. So, quick comment, Jack. Just doing a little scrolling here as we're talking about Tokyo Drift. Made 23 million in its opening weekend. Now, this is back in 2006. You won't guess it, but number one that weekend was the first Cars, so animated
Oh.
Cars movie, with 33 million. And somehow, Nacho Libre, the Jack Black Mexican sports comedy drama,
Interesting film.
yeah, got 28 million on its opening weekend. So if I'm sitting back as Fast and Furious, I'd be like, poor. And internationally, it only grossed under 100 million. So I think they'd be very disappointed with that amount. And I'm guessing they obviously, because Bow Wow in this one, wasn't he? Yeah, Bow Wow was in this. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that was
older, yeah.
peak, that was peak Bow Wow time.
He had a peak time.
That was peak. That was like, because that's when he was in, what's the basketball one that he was in? Like Mike.
Like Mike.
So
Yeah.
again, Like Mike was 2002. So he's like a kid back then. What a movie, by the way. You love Like Mike. And then that was 2006. So that's when he was just like 18, I'd say. So like, I'm guessing they were hoping like that was a draw card. It's like, oh my God, we got Bow Wow in our film.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think the the weakest part of Tokyo Drift,
Mm.
and the same for Too Fast, Too Furious, is with I'm not, I was watching Too Fast, Too Furious the other day. Sorry, just going back to the previous film. Paul Walker, I don't think, and can't really hold himself as a main character.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's with the knowledge that Vin Diesel is now the main character of the franchise.
Yeah.
But just watching it, I don't think Paul Walker and Tyrone Gibson can hold a film on their own.
Yeah.
They have a bit of chemistry,
Yeah.
but it's not like what Walker would have with Diesel. And yeah, I think the same for Tokyo Drift. Sean, the main character, I don't know where they pulled him from, but he was pretty average actor, and he's playing a high school kid. He looks about 30 as well.
Okay, so let's work out how old he actually is. Sorry, I clicked on the character, not the actual actor. So Lucas Black at the time, he's 37 now. So he would be in his early 20s. Yeah. So no thanks.
He even looks older than that. So yeah.
Because he's now, that actor now, he's like the main character in NCIS New Orleans. And he's been doing that for 6 seasons now. So not that that's anything to say, but he's really not turned into one of the biggest characters around. He is in Fast 9 though, so there is that connection. So interestingly enough, that guy's coming back.
Interesting.
So
interesting.
But looking at this though, in a small thing, he did have leading-ish roles in a lot of movies as a child actor from the 90s to early noughties, and then he sort of fell off. So I reckon, obviously, movie people are like, oh, yeah, he's not got it. Like, this guy can't really hold it up, and you just get thrown in as a TV actor. How bad would that be? But yeah, Justin Lin did that one, and he's done some decent movies. Obviously, he's looked over all of the other Fast, so Fast 4, 5, and 6 he did. And is he directing Fast 9 too?
I think, he is. Yeah,
he is.
I'm pretty sure he is.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, so he's back. Yeah. But he did Star Trek Beyond, didn't he? Far out.
He did. He's quite big.
Yeah. No, I did a couple of episodes of True Detective back in the day. Interesting for him.
Yeah, the first season, I'm guessing.
First season. Not the best. Season 2. So now we sort of slide in. So I think, obviously, Toretto comes back for Fast and Furious, the 4th movie.
Well, don't forget about his cameo at the end of Tokyo Drift.
Yeah, his cameo at the end of bloody Tokyo Drift, An uncredited cameo. So, also, I think this is great because at the 4th one, Toretto is called a professional street racer, car hijacker, and fugitive. So that's his, thing. And then it's now, then they start going, he's like an international... he's basically like an assassin by the end anyway. It's stupid. But now Fast 4, this was, for me, is always an interesting one because like we were saying before, it turns into this is when the franchise changes a little bit. Still car racing heavy, but then they kill off Letty. Obviously, spoilers for all of this in it. They kill off Letty, and
too
then
late
their
for warning.
relationship comes back together. Now, when you pull into Fast 5, though, Jack, why do you think this is where the franchise like changes? Now, why do you reckon they did it?
Well, I think the fourth still did perform quite well at the box office, I do believe. And while it was more about racing, you can kind of tell, you know, there was a bit of there was a gunfight and a few cars, you know, exploding here and there. I think they did see the less they did about racing and more about the criminal activity and everything behind the scenes. I think they seem to, you know, seen something with bringing Diesel back, most importantly as well. That, you know, 5 could just be all out action. And I think it helps by bringing in another A-list star of The Rock.
Yeah.
Who's to make everything turn into gold in terms of the box office if they bring him in. And I think also, I'm not sure if you agree with this, but I thought Fast 5 was almost an Avengers-like team up for Fast and Furious. They bring back Han from Tokyo Drift in the beginning of number 4. They bring back Gal Gadot, who is kind of like kind of an antagonist from number 4, Fast Furious.
Yeah.
Then they bring in pretty much everyone from the first movie, and they bring Ludacris and Tyrone Gibson from the second. It's like, and then they all use them, as part of the heist for the 5th one. So it is bringing back all the famous characters that you know and love, if you did love them, from the other 4 films, and bring them together.
Yeah, and looking here, so that was 2009 that was released. So, no, sorry, 2011. Sorry, my bad. And that's really at the point. So I'm just doing a little bit of a look at The Rock there, and this is when he's really at like, not saying like height of his powers, but like you're saying, you bring him in not as a main character, but when you saw The Rock and Vin Diesel and that trailer, because I just rewatched the trailers before, and you see them fighting, you're like, boom, here we go. Like, this is an action movie. If you're just a generic movie fan and you see all these guys on a poster, you're going to go watch that movie anyway. And luckily for them, this is actually a very good movie, I think. Of all of them, and I think if we were ranking, that's your number 1, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hands down.
Hands down.
It was my first one too, as well. I should mention that.
So for me, it's just it's just a really good movie. Because I remember trying to like convince Dad to watch it. He's like, I'm not watching Fast and Furious. I'm like, Dad, this is actually a good film. Despite the fact that there's a bank safe flying around Brazil for the last 20 minutes, I actually feel connected. You feel you feel a decent connection with these characters. And you feel a decent connection with their motivations, and that they're trying to stand up for good. And obviously they want to take some money from it, but you sort of have a connection with them. And I think The Rock brings in, and he plays that character very well. He's very good at that. And just the action feels really strong and tight, if that makes sense. Like it's very well done, and the acting is pretty good. And just the intricacies of the story before we start getting way too outlandish in the next one and then the next one, this one sort of really feels like this is the peak of the franchise.
Yeah. I mean, with terms of the action sequences, you know, you have the big one at the beginning when he's going alongside the train. They have the breakout of Vin Diesel on the bus at the beginning, which was the continuation of that scene from the 4th one. And then I think the highlight, obviously, like you said, is the safe being stolen at the end, which involves, you know, the car racing and the action, you know, and incorporates both of the best. Yeah. And I think it's just a really good scene. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where the film franchise hits a peak, and people understand that The Rock is really integral to this series at this point in time. So when we talk about, because you can see the trajectory of the money it makes. So the 4th one goes from an $85 million budget to 360, give or take. Then they drop in a bit more money, obviously, for these larger action set pieces at 125 mil, and they make 620. So you're sort of sitting there going like, we're pushing big franchise now. This is a moneymaker. Now, again, that cast would be expensive, but I think at this point, this is probably like The Rock is on the up here, but I don't think he would have been as expensive as he is today in a franchise way.
He'd be pushing it though, I reckon.
He'd be pushing it, but I think people now The Rock is a bankable star. That's when he started to become bankable because The Rock turned around the G.I. Joe franchise a little bit too for that. Like he at least made that movie watchable. And I think that's The Rock's best thing is he makes things watchable. So now we move into Fast 6. And I think this is when we really start hitting craziness a little bit. And this is when the franchise starts really pushing. It's still grounded for me, in a way, because Luke Evans' character comes in. But now we start getting points of Letty's not dead and Letty's mind's been wiped and she's now working for the other people now because it's just got to be convenient and it's about family. And The Rock comes back, and I think this is when the series, though, for me, starts meshing into one over the last 3 movies. So 6, 7, and 8 for me really feel like I can't 100%, even if I watched all 3 back to back, everything sort of meshes in an action. You know roughly where they're at, but I sort of start just going like, in this one, what does Ludacris do? What does, like, you sort of let all those main players, all the side characters, feel like they just do the same thing in each movie. Because I guess that's what their role is for the script. It's like, okay, now we'll get Tyrese Gibson's character just to make some dumb comments, and he's our little. And
that's the thing about I think that's the weak thing about Tyrese Gibson's character as well. When he was introduced in Too Fast, Too Furious, he kind of has a bit of humor to him, but he's a very serious character.
Yeah.
And then comes Fast 5 and 6 and so on. He's like the humorous character.
Yeah.
So he goes from some tough, kind of black guy, he's been in prison in the second one.
A little bit of a racial stereotype there, Jack, but that's fine.
But yeah, no, and then come number 6, 5, 6, 7, he is like the humor of the series.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's sometimes for these actors, because then they're like, oh, okay, well, I want to like headline, like he wants his own spin-off. But really, what does he add? Because it just seems like in every big action set piece, it's like, why are we flying out of this why are we dropping the cars out of a plane? Or why am I on the ice? Why do I have to touch the rocket? It's like, okay, I guess if you're writing the script, it's like, okay, time for a Tyrese joke about what stupid hilarity they're doing. And I guess at some point they're trying to connect his character to us in a way, sort of being like, if we're the audience, we can sort of sympathize with him because he's like the everyman being stuck in this random situation where he has to fly a car out of a plane. Now, no one could do that. And then like he ends up in the bushes or some shit, doesn't he? In one of them, 6 or 7, like it's like, oh, okay, well, he's not as skilled as everyone else. Whereas,
and I think,
go.
You go.
No, you go.
I think 6 is when you say the series goes crazy. I think 6 brings in the tank. Remember on the freeway?
Oh, for God's sake!
Yeah. I think that any movie that brings in a bloody tank in a car movie, you're going too far.
Yeah.
But in this situation, it was for the better. And and there's a scene where they're trying to track down a tank, and are they trying to catch up with the bad guy, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then your favorite part happens where he tries to save Letty, and he jumps across this huge gap as she's in, she's flying across the bridge. Then he rams a car, so he gets the adrenaline to fly across the bridge. He catches Letty going across this massive gap between the freeway, catches her, lands on another hood of the car.
Yeah. Like for me, you could easily put that in, like, for me, that's like an American football sort of thing, like an AFL thing, where over the top of 2 characters, you could just put like an AFL person and a ball and just have the mark and the catch and then like the land. Because I'm just like, there is no way, and I understand this franchise, so I get it. But at some point, it's just too much. Because, and I know we're going to talk about Extraction later in the show, but the thing I liked about that was, and I don't know whether it's ratings and stuff and we can't show blood, because I know there's elements of that too, because it makes it an M movie or you know what I mean? But because America's different to our rating systems here in Australia. But I'm like, show some blood or show some, like, someone's injured. Whereas they're flying at 100 miles an hour, they crash onto a car and they get up and run away. It's like, really, guys?
Yeah.
But then I think my favorite part of this one is at the end when they're trying to catch the plane. And it is on the world's longest runway.
Oh, it never ends, does it?
It never ends. And I think someone's done like a video or like on YouTube, as I'm sure someone has, and done some diagrams and graphics on it. Just like how long this runway is, and it's like the length of a city. Like it's like the longest runway in the world, and you're still in the end. And obviously, Gal Gadot's character dies in this here now too, and she does.
Very anticlimactic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
very
like
briefly.
and she's dead. It's like okay.
I guess she wasn't the best character in Fast Furious 4, but she's been around for 5 and 6, and she dies without any sadness, really. Yeah.
And that's where I feel like it. Now, there's some great sequences in this movie. Like there is some good stuff, but it just doesn't hit the heights because I feel like, and this is what this franchise's motto is basically. So we can't have too much of a go at them, but it's basically, what did we do in the last movie, and how can we do it better or bigger? So not better. It's how can we do it bigger. So that's where this one's the longest runway, and all these, and your tank on a highway sequence. But how can we go bigger? But this movie goes...
people, I just got it here. Yeah. They measured the runway at 48 kilometers and 30 miles.
48 kilometers?
Yeah, 13 minutes of uninterrupted runway.
13 minutes of runway. Like, and that's, I always clamor for like action movies to actually give me like, I think once you bring into an action movie a ticking clock, you have to stick with the ticking clock. So whether it's like 20-minute countdown, your film is now on a 20-minute, this action set piece is 20 minutes. So I hate then when they cut and then it's like, now there's 3 minutes left, but that 3 minutes takes 7 minutes. So just keep it at 7 minutes. I know you're trying to up the stakes, but just don't do it too, or have split, you know what I mean? And so this runway, could you just have this sequence somewhere else? Could you do it somewhere else? But they want the plane. That's the problem.
Yeah. So you could have a vehicle involved.
Like they want the plane, and that's the annoying thing for me because you look back and you go, so how long did you say it was? 38 kilometers or some shit?
So it was 30 miles, but 48.2 kilometers, apparently. Someone apparently measured it.
So that's more than a bloody marathon.
Yeah. Don't know who did those calculations, but yeah.
So anyway, I know someone's going to have to done the calculations somehow, but that's like, even, I'm guessing they're driving at over 100 k's an hour. This is quick math of no understanding. So you're saying they're driving anyway to keep this at like a 20-minute set piece at like 140 k's. What I'm guessing is what a plane goes at it, or planes, I don't know. Again, no scientific reasoning here. But fucking hell.
Like, pretty funny. You try not to think about it. Yeah.
Like, really, guys? And I think that's sometimes the best thing is if someone asks a question, you just go, oh, it's a movie. Like, doesn't matter. Like, so I'm just going to do this check now. Average.
Okay, we'll do some quick maths while we're here.
Average length of airport runway is average length is at least 2 kilometers.
Okay, so it's just a little bit further.
So it's 24 times the length.
Fast and Furious. You got to love it.
Oh, God, blimey.
But yeah, no, I do think the 6 is good. I think 6 with bringing Letty back into the equation, because it was never really, watching the 4th, it was never really told in detail about how she died. So in some regards, it could make sense of her coming back, but at the same time, you just got to think of it as a movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it brings the team pretty much all the characters back once again from 5. It's the first, I think it's the first continuous film to bring back pretty much all the cast from one film to another. Because obviously the 5th worked, so they thought, let's bring them all back again and we'll make the box office numbers we will from Fast 5. And it did. It surpassed them by quite a bit, I think. If you got the numbers there, Will, in a second.
Yeah.
And I think you've got, is it Luke Hobbs? No, Luke Hobbs is The Rock.
Yeah.
Luke Evans is the villain for number 6.
Yeah.
And I think he plays a pretty intimidating villain compared to what came before.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, yeah. And I think this is when they start going with central, especially in, like, because the 5th one has a villain, but it's more the battle between The Rock and stuff, and then there's the Mexican or the Brazilian drug lords and police and stuff. So it's more like, I don't feel like the 5th one has like a set villain. It's more like
he's kind of the main government. He's the older Brazilian guy who's just owns the city because he's so rich. He's not really a villain. He's not physically intimidating to the cast.
No.
Just has a lot of money and
Yeah.
people at his disposal.
Yeah. So, and I think this is a thing with Luke Evans, whereas actors, it must be the hardest thing to realize. But I think Luke Evans is a good villain in like a B movie, and this is an A movie, so he does actually quite well. But he's also just a supporting player. Like, I don't think he can really he wouldn't be able to hold his own movie, but he does an excellent job in this role. I think whereas you compare him to Statham in The Seventh, obviously we know Statham can hold his own in a
Because
franchise. He has before previously, where I think Luke Evans was smartly cast in this, and you can feel like he can hold his own, like he just like in these situations. So I think he's good. I think he's good.
Yeah.
So
And what did you work out?
No, so in the end, but this is when they start throwing in a bit more of the, like, obviously Gina Carano comes into here, and like you sort of start getting all these other wrestling characters, and then trying to like sort of shoehorn in other people to put them on a poster to then go, oh look, this person you like in other things is here.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, guys?
Yeah, but before we go on to 7, I think it's worth noting a couple of things as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think Paul Walker's death, just before, in between filming number 7 as well. I think that was a massive, huge loss to the production, I think, because he only filmed a few scenes, and then the rest they had to get his brother in to do
and really recut it. So
and in between 6, 7 as well, you find out that Tokyo Drift was set in between these films, with one of the main characters, now Han, actually dying in Tokyo between 6 and 7, which was actually shot originally in the 3rd film, but they've now placed that in between these 2 films. So his funeral is in 7 as well.
Yeah. And you get, the mid-credit scene of, we're now going to throw in who killed him. And you're like, but I think this is the thing though, because in that movie, you then see, because Statham comes at the end, doesn't he? Yeah, he's uncredited cameo at the end. And when you watch that, you didn't know, no one knew it was Statham. It was like they're throwing in their own little Marvel MCU teaser in the mid-credits. And you're like, boom, Statham's here. Like, this is going to be intense. Like,
I loved it. I really did love it.
I remember watching that. Did we see that one? I reckon we saw that together.
We probably did. Yeah.
I just assume we have. But at that point, I'm like, far out. Like, this franchise is just going like, well, we've got The Rock. Now we're just going to throw Statham into there. We don't even know what the character's going to be like, but we just got to get Statham in.
Yeah. I was so excited.
And this, now, what's the reason again why The Rock isn't in this one as much? Because I thought, obviously, after Paul Walker's death, they might push The Rock a little bit more into this, but
I think production schedule. I think this is The Rock's peak time. I think he had a lot on his plate around. When was this? 2014?
It would have filmed in 2014. So
so I do think he had quite a few films, under his belt. Then he was probably doing not quite Jumanji yet, but this is the peak of his career, I reckon.
So if we're looking here, filming, I began in late 2013, and then Paul Walker sadly died. It was in 2014 in the end. So,
because the movie did get delayed, I think, quite a bit because Paul Walker did pass away. It got delayed
he did pass. Yeah, so it's supposed to be a 2014 release, and they released it in 2015. So I think in the end, this is where the franchise, for me, hits peak, and 8 also pushes it even further. But this is when they start going those peak crazy stories. Crazy moments. Because where in the movie again do they fly out of the 2 buildings? That's earlier in the film, isn't it? Because then they go and find the chick
in Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi. They get the Cypher chick. But obviously at this point, so Fast 6, they go, the budget is anywhere between 160 to 260 million. So no one knows. And when you put a $100 million bracket of where this movie could be, you're like, wow, they've spent some cash. But then we move into 7, same thing, 200 to 250. But we pushed to $1.5 billion this movie makes. Now, where are they again? Is this still in the top 10 of all time? It was in like the top 5.
Box office.
Yeah.
It was for a long time. Yeah. I can't quote that it is now.
Let me just check.
But I think a lot of the budget for this one as well, not a lot of it, but a couple of million easily, went into Weta's recreation of Paul Walker's face to finish off his scenes. So it wasn't just all the special, car chases and all that. It was a bit to recreate his character.
It's sitting at 9th now. So just
so still
behind
top 10.
Just behind the Avengers. So, but since then, there's been obviously both Avengers Infinity Wars, Endgame, Star Wars, Force Awakens come through, Jurassic World. So at that point, I reckon Jurassic World was around the same year. So I don't know which one came out first, but Force Awakens was late that year. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at that point, it was
Fast
like
7 came out in April, so that was before Jurassic Park. Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, it was like third all time. So it was sitting behind Avatar and Titanic.
That's huge.
What's crazy, in my opinion, and also the Avengers. So it was sitting fourth. It was just like a couple of $1 million behind the Avengers. So what's crazy for a franchise that no one had ever thought would get to that amount of money. Now, again, for me, the Paul Walker thing did push the franchise. Like, that made a lot of money out of that. Is how are they going to?
It's a bit like Heath Ledger going to Batman. Their final performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone wanted to see it. How the special effects were done. Did they pull it off? It was, and whether they gave him a goodbye. Instead of killing the character off, they decided to continue him into a happy life for this.
What I think is for them was a good way to go about it, because I think the hardest thing is, again, we have no idea how you could do it, but I think you push the through line of the series of family, and you pushed it on, and I think they handled it exceptionally well. I think, to be perfectly honest with you, it's probably one of the best things that they handled that so well.
I don't cry during many films, but that finale where Vin Diesel drives off and Paul Walker goes in the opposite direction to "It's been a long way." Yeah, I just
long
cried.
day, long road.
Thank you.
I think you could do a remix of that, of how you think the song goes, with just the music behind it, but no lyrics.
My friend. Yeah, no, great tune.
That's good. So I think, honestly, this is where it goes to, again, crazy sort ofness, and they bring in the God's Eye. What for me is just like, oh, God's sake, like, now we're bringing in this sort of, I think it's a little bit of like a franchise killer, to be perfectly honest with you. And you're sort of like, not a franchise killer, but it's like this sort of, you've now put this device in, and unless you completely destroy it, it's going to come, like, it has to come back at other times.
And it did, didn't it? It was implemented in 8 as well.
Yeah, and so you go, is that going to be implemented in any other films going down the line? But this is when we start seeing, obviously, Statham in this movie is the bad guy.
And he makes a great bad guy. He starts off with a massive, fisticuffs with the Rock, which is my dream fight sequence. Two of my favorite action actors against each other. Fantastic.
And they go at it, and that's when I go, that's probably one of my favorite action sequences, because it feels real. Like, there's no blood or anything, but it feels like when they're hitting each other, like they're getting hit. Whereas I think some of these ones, and we go later in the film, obviously, when Jason Statham and Toretto, of Vin Diesel's character, is hitting each other, and they're like hitting each other with poles, and they're like hitting each other, and you're like, then they just get up. I'm like, for God's sake, can you just give me a little bit of stakes? Because then my favorite ending to any battle ever is the old hits the ground and then the rocks cover all over him, or whatever it is.
Oh yeah.
At the end, and I'm like, oh my God, like, really? But then I think your oh my God reaction is after the fact. But when you're in it, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, this is so good. This is just random shit flying everywhere. And then I do have to say, I love when then the Rock comes back after he's been in hospital the whole movie, and like his arm's broken, and he's just like, boom, and then the cast just breaks, and you're just like, oh God, this franchise is just what I want it to be. Like,
and it knows what it is too, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it just knows what it is. So for me, I have to say, I don't like rewatching it too much, because I think it is, like you say, it's a sad movie and it brings back. But this is at the peak of, we know what we're about, and we're going to keep doing it because you keep watching it. So we'll just keep giving you all this just over the top popcorn, and let's get into it. That's what I meant. Like, do you feel that?
Oh no, I feel that too. And by bringing Statham aboard, because he's known for his Transporter series, so he's pretty familiar with cars and driving and all that. The Italian Job. So he's no stranger from all those car stunts. And I
Yeah.
think he's just implemented in the world really well
Yeah.
as well. Like what The Rock brought to 5, he brings to 7, hence the spin-off later on.
Yeah.
I think, just those combined, I think make a really good film. And I think when Statham's not around, they somehow find a way to put him in the scene. Statham in this film comes out of bloody nowhere half the time.
Yeah.
Now
Oh, yeah.
Punjabi's just, he's in the building. All right,
Yeah.
he's got a machine gun. He's gunning everyone down. Oh, he's in the car behind them, and he hasn't.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him for the last 50 minutes, but there he is.
There's Statham. Yeah. And I think that's the thing with the series is you get annoyed at that in a lot of other franchises. But with this, you just go, it's a Fast and Furious. Okay, cool. There's Statham.
Yeah. I'm glad he's back. Yeah, bring it on. Yeah.
He makes the scene. Like, he steals this movie, I think, in some way. Like, he's very good. And and I think Statham plays that action hero or the bad guy very, very well. And this is when you start getting him and The Rock have a good bit of chemistry here and in their limited scenes. But this is when the whole world of the Fast and the Furious for me goes a little bit outlandish when you start Kurt Russell's character comes in. As they say, Mr. No Name or something. Is that his?
Mr. Nobody.
Yeah, Mr. Nobody. And they start going like, now we're a COVID ops team. Like, it's like, oh God, like now the government in some form, COVID ops sort of thing. And now these guys, I'm sure there's that many more trained and better operators to do this than, but again, that's the world we're living in or we're watching. So
mysterious governments and eagle eyes that can spy on the world. And, there they are 9 years ago, just racing against each other in the car.
And stealing DVD players or video players.
DVD players. So, and I like Kurt Russell's character, though. He's a chill guy. I love him as an actor, too. He just brings, some peace and serenity to the film and a bit more humor as well. He's having a, Corona with Vin Diesel.
Yeah.
He's a nice presence, I think, on screen
for it. So now we move on to 8, and this is the franchise is still making $1 billion. So we're at a point now where these movies are guaranteed box office hits, and you are guaranteed to make money if you keep putting all these characters together. Now, the one thing I'm not a massive fan about this movie is I like it because I think like The Rock's great, Statham's great. I would have preferred that Statham stayed away for one movie. I think that's what I would have liked, because I feel like he's gone from one movie, he's killed Han, obviously at the end of the 6th one, and the 7th one, he's the bad guy, to now the 8th one, he's an ally.
Yeah. He's not quite family, but they kind of forgive him for killing his mate Han.
Yeah, like very quickly. And they forgive him for the fact is not even killing just Han, but the last movie, he was trying to kill them all. Now it's like, I'm with you guys. Get it right. We need you and you need us. So we're going to come together. But
once again, same thing as The Rock. They knew he brought in the box office, so they're bringing him back. Yeah.
And you know what? You just sit back and you go, okay, cool. And I like how they bring back Kurt Russell's good. Scott Eastwood's decent in this movie too. I like Charlize Theron was good. I just hated the fact that it's like, I understand what they need to do now is like turn Dom against them, and I get the concept of it, like I do. But I just didn't like this one as much. I feel like, and this is when the franchise for me sometimes, and I kind of like Statham and The Rock, and sometimes with Vin Diesel, I'm just like, nah, this one I just wasn't as, and like the motives, like I understood it, like I got it. But the way, like Charlize Theron's character's good, like I don't know, I'm probably even being a bit harsh on this, but
I mean,
it's, I'm just not, as on top of it. But I guess they're trying to give The Rock some of what I'm guessing, if they had an overarching theme, probably a little bit of Paul Walker's character might have been, and that's where the family dynamic might have been a little bit worse too, was then he would have portrayed him there. And I don't know if they've written these down the line and then had to even rewrite this one. But
I think a lot of the Fast 8's plot relied on a lot of mystery. Like a lot of the trailers implemented as Dom's turning against his team. Why is this? Why has he done this? They're family half the time. And really, as we find out, the reason is because Cypher, Charlize Theron's character, has Dom's ex-girlfriend, Eleanor, who's the policeman from number 5, that they end up together, but we really don't see her since, has a baby and she's holding him hostage. And once again, characterization, none, really. Are we meant to feel for her and her baby? Yes, I guess, because it's
the kid,
Vin Diesel's kid. But otherwise, for Elena herself, I think the connection once again hasn't been built, and
No.
it's there for the sake of having just a new story and Vin Diesel, something interesting for him to turn against. Because the series is known for family, and so for Vin Diesel to turn on them makes for a pretty big plot line.
Yeah, and because then she also just kills Elena pretty quickly, doesn't she? Like the kid,
Yeah,
that
about
she
halfway through.
she's gone, and I'm like,
Mm.
okay,
Doesn't have
like
the impact though, does it?
no,
Because
because we're
we don't
not,
know her that well. Mm.
and like obviously they're not going to kill a kid, so
No.
that's going to be fine. But I
Mm.
think the thing with this is I prefer all the scenes that Diesel's not in a way too. Like I really enjoy the final action sequence on the plane when they bring back Statham and his brother, and that whole scene.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoy, and like whenever the Rock's in it, I'm enjoying the Rock, and I'm enjoying how the team's going, and like that prison sequence is good.
Mm.
And I'm guessing at this point, this is where the writers and producers were like, "We got to get the Rock and Statham in a movie together." Like this
Yeah.
is when that sort of turns, and this is when the whole because the Rock and Vin Diesel aren't in many scenes together, are they? Though, because this is when their feud's sort of starting to really pop up.
Yeah.
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 So
And
they're not.
that was quite big. Yeah.
Yeah. They're not trying to sort of have too many scenes together in that way. Because I reckon even, and I'll need to rewatch this, so tell me if I'm wrong. I
Mm.
nearly even think, because is the Rock there in that final scene when they're in New York? He is, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
having beers on the New
Yeah, they
York
are. Yeah.
balcony.
Shaw
I believe
delivers
he
Dom his
is.
son, putting his differences aside with Dom and Hobbs. But I don't know if they're in a scene together there, though. Like, if they're
Oh,
actually in the same
together.
frame. Like, are they in the same? I don't think they're in the
Ah,
same frame.
well, I can't say for that.
Yeah, I
Mm.
need to rewatch that part again because I thought there was a lot of shit on that because they weren't massive fans of each other, like we've obviously said
Mm.
before. And I don't know
And
if they.
neither is Tyrone Gibson a fan of
Tyrese.
The Rock
Yeah.
either. Tyrese,
No.
sorry. Yeah. Because of
Because,
he was getting significantly higher pay
yeah.
than what Tyrese was. And I think, well, clearly because he's a bigger box office star and will draw in more money.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people took that quite seriously because, all staff, regardless, should be paid equal amount because they're all kind of in this film, same amount of time.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing was as well during this filming, and the other one as well, is The Rock is quite professional.
Yeah.
And from what I heard, Vin Diesel kind of was a few minutes late or hours late to the set, and he just didn't have that didn't come across as professional as The Rock.
Yeah.
And that's kind of their personalities kind of colliding a little bit was the start of this feud.
And we look at it, and because Diesel's a producer on this franchise,
It is,
so he, and I think that's where he would be saying, "This is my franchise. Why are we putting it?" And that's where there might be some clashes with him and other people who are producing this franchise. Just basically like him going, "Well, The Rock's number 2 in this list. Obviously, Diesel's number 1 when it becomes the actors there." But
once Paul
even
Walker drops off.
Paul
Yeah.
Walker drops off. But even on the posters, it's big photo of Diesel, big photo of The Rock. Like they're our two bankable people. And I'd be honest with you, and I think everyone would be honest in going, if those two are sitting there on two separate posters at the movies and we haven't decided what we're going to go watch, I'm going to put a number to it. I think 85% of the people are going to go watch The Rock's movie. Do you reckon that? Is that a too high percentage? But I think more.
It's probably a bit right.
I think more people would go watch a Rock movie than go watch a Vin Diesel movie.
I think that's I think that's very clear. Even just looking how much work The Rock gets compared to Diesel.
And I think The Rock is, as you just said too, professional. But everything you see from The Rock in his social media game, everything is just
genuine.
Genuine and professional. You look at him and you go, he's on set, he's working his ass off, he's doing stuff, like he's doing all this stuff, and you feel like, okay, here we go. This is nailed on. We better move on, I reckon, Jack, because we're pushing a decent amount of time now on today's episode. So we've got stuff to go on. But one thing we want to talk about was spin-offs too, because I think Fast 8, or The Fate of the Furious, again, is a good movie in the franchise. Where does it sit? I think it's middle of the range. And there, but with spin-off films. Now, where does Hobbs and Shaw hit for you in terms of action movie, and would you want to see more Hobbs and Shaw films?
I would happily see more Hobbs and Shaw. I think the dynamic between The Rock and Statham, which is the way they did in the first place, does work very well. But as a film, apart from showing the whole film in the 2-minute trailer, I do think it changes tone quite a bit. and some of the scenes don't quite mesh very well together. Like it's very much a lot more humorous than the rest of the franchise.
Yeah,
because they're throwing off, the different personalities between Statham and The Rock, and I think some of the action sequences I can barely describe them, but he's pulling a helicopter at the end, pulling in a helicopter while he's riding a vehicle on a cliffside. And while that crashes, and then he's fighting a genetically modified soldier, which is, Idris Elba, and teaming up with The Rock. 1 minute sunny, next minute it's raining. There's just, and stuff like that. There's no consistency in that last scene. Yeah.
I think once you pulled in Idris Elba's character, making him like literally unbeatable.
Superman quote.
Quote. He is unbeatable. And I guess their whole point is it's family, so we can beat him with family and all this sort of stuff. But I'm like, you just didn't need to make him that Black Superman. Like, you could have just pulled back a couple of his things. But just looking here again, so this one is produced by The Rock and Statham, and Chris Morgan, who is credited with turning the franchise around because he produced he did Tokyo Drift, but Fast 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And a couple of the other films he's done, The Mummy. That's The Mummy, the Tom Cruise Mummy. Sorry, but that's sort of what he's been in, and I think he's sort of pushed away. And I reckon this is when a producer sits there and goes, "I got a moneymaker here. Like, I got to make this film." Because what did it make at the box office? Still made $760 million. So on a $200 million budget, so they're making $300 million off that once you put marketing, etc., into the film, into the production costs. But that's just a person who's sitting there going, I want to make money. So The Rock and Statham, we can't have them in the same movie basically again. So we're just going to have The Rock's characters over here because people like him, and Statham can be with him. And then we'll have Vin Diesel over here. So you guys don't need to be in a movie. I'll produce them all. I got the rights, so I'm going to produce it, and I'll work with both of you. So Vin Diesel, that can be now your series. The Rock, that can be your series. And you know what? I really couldn't care less because I'm making cash. So I think that's where he'd be sitting there basically just going, yeah, do whatever you guys want, but I'm happy. I'm making the money. So because The Rock's not in Fast 9, is he? He's not in 10. So
no. Well, we don't know about 10 at this stage, but he's definitely not in 9.
No.
He's been replaced by John Cena.
Yeah. So
get back in him, probably.
Yeah, great. So at some point, you could imagine if they then went like, if The Rock was coming back, they're like, he's actually Dom's brother. Like that, you could see them doing some crap like that he finds out, something like that. But no. So where does this? I really don't want to sort of go into, I think, because we can chat about Fast 9 at a later date, I think, and sort of upcoming.
Hobbs and Shaw, I could have a really big chat about on its own episode.
And I think we might even do that in the coming weeks, because I think they're interesting as we've sort of delved into the series now and where it's at and why it's sort of done. I think it's interesting to talk about where they go next, and that's probably for a part 2 of this chat maybe. Because otherwise we could talk for hours, because there's 9, 10, there'll probably be 15 movies anyway. And there's even, for us talking about games, there's spin-offs and all that sort of stuff too. So give me just a little quick thing, Jack, though, of what this series, we sort of said it at the start and you said crazy, but what does this series mean to you as a film goer? Like, what does this series mean to you?
It means a lot. I hold it pretty close to my heart. This franchise. You know, I'm a late bloomer with the franchise really coming in at Fast 5, but then again, that's when it also gained mainstream audience appeal as well, and the box office numbers grew. But no, I think the cast get along really well, and I do like that idea of just the outrageous action sequences, because that's kind of the films I like. I love action, good action sequences, and I think because Fast and Furious has the budget, it can pull them off really well. And I think, this is Vin Diesel's franchise, and I think he's made it because of this.
Yeah, so for me, I think this is one thing that we've got written down on our sort of ideas board, is talking about bankable actors and what their franchise is compared to other franchises that they sort of come a part of and don't make as much money. And as you said, this is Vin Diesel's franchise, and that's shown by him passing The Rock off onto another point. But for me, the main part of this is the ensemble piece, like you're saying before, is bringing all these actors together and these characters that I think from 4 or 5 we've become to enjoy. And it is a bankable popcorn movie that I look forward to, and that's the reason why I go to the cinema. I think for me is when we talk about even Mission Impossible, these types of movies are why people go to the cinema and why mainstream audience go to the cinema. And I think this is why mainstream audience don't go and see your niche character pieces of film, because those movies may be better movies, but when you want to be entertained, this is what you want to go see. And
Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah.
you may not agree with the dynamics of what's going on and the logistics, but I think that is the beauty of cinema, is you don't have to agree and you are engrossed from start to end, and you can put them on at any time. So I think for this series, that for me is what I want, and I'm happy to go and give you your $25 for a ticket and a popcorn and enjoy 2.5 hours where I don't have to worry about anything else in life. And I think that's what brings this series, like you said, into everyone's hearts in some respects. So now,
well said. Bring
that
on 9.
finishes. Yeah, bring on 9 and bring on more Hobbs and Shaws. So now we want to talk about quickly, guys, Netflix's Extraction. So this may even just be pushed on to
a recommendation of the week, we'll say.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what we should have done, Jack. I need to get my music that I will be a little bit creative there to move into that. And this is both our recommendation of the week while you're stuck in some form of quarantine or isolation or social distancing. When you see, Jack, a Netflix original movie and
piece of shit.
Yes. I agree. So when this comes up, and I reckon it was about 2-3 weeks ago, Netflix sort of slowly started, when you log into Netflix, dropping this in as a little bit of an ad or coming soon, etc. When you saw the ads for this and Hemsworth runs and jumps off that cliff into the water, etc., and you see a bit of action, did you still think piece of shit?
Oh, well, I actually never saw the trailer.
Oh, okay.
I remember seeing things of him filming it a year or so, 2 years back, but I didn't see a single trailer. I just saw a new Chris Hemsworth film on Netflix. Watch it now. I'm like, I'll get on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I never saw the trailer.
I think I never saw the trailer besides the part where, you know, when Netflix starts it to play for you when you sit on the screen for a little bit.
Right.
So that's what I saw. But for me anyway, I love a good movie when we have to throw in directors, or like before we even get into action, they go like produced by cinematic masters Anthony and Joe Russo, starring Avengers Infinity War and Endgame star Chris Hemsworth, directed by Avengers Infinity Game and Endgame stunt coordinator, or like second unit director. His name's Sam Hargrave, who I think is actually very good and directs this quite well. Fun fact, he was Chris Evans' stunt double back in the first Avengers. Sam Hargrave. So, and then he pushed into being the stunt coordinator on Civil War and Infinity War, and then worked as a stunt producer on Endgame, because I'm guessing they had that many stunt coordinators on Endgame. It was not just one single person. He probably worked under someone else, but probably did a ridiculous amount of stuff. So, yeah. Thoughts, Jack, on this movie? You're recommending it to everyone?
I would recommend it. And I think if you're a fan of something like Angel Has Fallen with Gerald Butler or John Wick, it has a very similar feel of the protagonist is almost invincible in certain aspects. And the way the action shots are set are really well choreographed.
Yeah.
You know, he uses an environment. It's a lot of quick gunshots, to the head, which you can kind of relate back to Wick. So for choreographing action scenes, amazing. Very simple on plot. I think without giving anything away, the plot is Extraction.
Yeah.
Chris Hemsworth is an Aussie soldier, and he is trying to get a boy I'm gathering with a very wealthy father.
His father was the drug lord. Yes.
Yeah, drug lord, wealthy drug lord. Yeah. And trying to get him out of the country before he's killed by his father's enemies, essentially.
Yeah. So for me, I was pleasantly surprised in this. And I think when you look at a movie, that's why I think I love John Wick also, is I feel there's real stakes because Keanu Reeves does an excellent job at portraying being injured in scenes. Like, I think, again, whoever deals with, I can't remember what the exact role is on a film set, but when you say film something at the end of production, or sorry, at the start of production, but it's the end of the movie, sort of the continuity person of certain things of where, and again, it's just a part of being a director. But I felt like through the whole movie, whenever Chris Hemsworth say like his leg's sore or he's been shot somewhere or his arm's broken, you can actually see he's genuinely hurt. And even in his action fighting, it's like, well, we can't use that arm as much because that is hurt or broken or injured. Can you hear a bit of building noise in the background right now?
Only very briefly.
Okay, cool. Just because these headphones, I can't hear a single thing of what's going on, but obviously the building across from me.
No,
sorry, guys. I'm in sort of a, there's a lot of building stuff going on around my place at the moment. But for that, and I did feel like there was stakes though in this film, and it shows it quite quickly in Hemsworth's character without going too far into it, is when you get shot at, there is blood. After there's some punches and hand-to-hand combat, even one of the again, this is the hard thing with a movie like this, is names just completely go past me. But when there's one of the characters and they're fighting, you can clearly see his face is swelling up when you see him later, and there's those sort of things. What I did enjoy, and I am liking to see other stuff produced by the Russos, because really, besides any of the MCU sort of stuff, I haven't watched much of their gear. And
I think the Russos are trying to make the most of the Avengers. They got 21 Bridges with Chad Boswick. They're working on something with Tom Holland. So they're getting all the Avengers and almost making them the star of their own films out of the MCU. Yeah.
So, because Extraction was written by Joe Russo also. And Cherry. So they directed Cherry, and that's the one with Tom Holland in it. So what apparently a lot of people are starting to say is quite good. Or they're talking it up themselves at the moment. So, no,
anyway, I'd definitely recommend. Yeah,
I would recommend it a heartbeat. And tell us what you think of Extraction, because for me, this is turning into, as we've just spoken about a lot of this episode, is on bankable movie stars and where they sort of sit in the film landscape. I think we start seeing now Hemsworth is a bankable action star. If this goes to the cinemas, though, does it make a lot of money? I'm not 100% sure.
No.
And they said it sits on a $65 million budget, and they'd written this with the idea of someone else who was a little bit smaller than a Hemsworth-style character. But once the Russos gave Hemsworth the script and he was interested, they said, well, this is the type of person we want to play this role. So it's when you see a Hemsworth and they're writing on that, like you said before, I did thoroughly enjoy this this movie. So did you enjoy David Harbour's little cameo?
I did. I didn't expect him to see him in that, but no, he was quite good. No, he was fantastic.
Because when I saw him come into frame, I'm like, is that bloody David Harbour?
Like, I've seen Stranger Things, don't get me wrong, but him coming in was great. You can just leave. Sorry.
I didn't even get that at the start, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. The way I came across.
And then I'm like, oh god, it wasn't bad actually, mate. That was pretty good. So in the end, it's sitting at a 63 on Rotten Tomatoes. Well, holds a good approval rating, and I would say anyway, 100% give it a watch. It's a perfect movie to go on at this time. But
if you love action, it's a bit violent, I will admit. So if you're a bit hesitant against seeing some blood and stuff, probably don't watch it. But if you love a high quality basic action film, definitely, give it a watch now.
And this is, for me, is what Netflix need to produce more of. Something that's a lower budget. Don't go Bright, because I think this is one thing I want to talk about, is Bright at another point, where it's $200 million with crazy over the top, that Will Smith one, Netflix movie. Make a movie 65 to 100 million, and that for me is what I want from a Netflix produced film at this point. And because otherwise they start going way too over the top, and it's no thank you. So I thought I did enjoy this a lot, I have to say.
Yeah, and I think Hemsworth's career is going to take a few interesting turns as well after Thor. Because he's very Oscar, isn't he? I think outside of his Thor voice, I think a lot of his other films as well that he's, played kind of a war officer. I'm trying to think what that movie was now. 12 Strong. I'm not sure if you've seen that film. But he almost has to play an Australian in some of these more prominent roles outside the MCU. But no, it was very good. Yeah, I'm going off topic.
On the last thing for that, I actually really enjoyed the fact that they just made him Australian. and they didn't do like he had to put on an accent or whatever, because I think sometimes like Hemsworth has such a strong Australian accent. Like he can act an American accent if he needs to, but he's very true blue Aussie in a way, and just being able to play that, I think I thought he was excellent actually, and I thought he was really good. He carries it. But if you had to make him do a Boston accent or like a New York accent,
his acting weakens, I think.
Yeah. Whereas I think for this, he can just sort of be himself in a way too, and can talk. And they probably changed some parts of the script, and like the amount of times he goes, "Hey mate," like, and he says "mate," is probably him just going, "Well, I'm Australian. Let's just keep it." Like the script probably doesn't have that in there. I'd like to see that, because maybe it was they thought an American would play it or whatever. And I know because he was Australian, he just wanted that Australian scene in there.
And he adds it, doesn't he?
He adds it, yeah. But Ari said, a lot of Australian crew through the whole film too, in Bangladesh, where they filmed it in.
Yeah, Bangladesh is correct. In
Bangladesh. So she said, massive Australian crew did it. So I'm not sure if Sam Hargrave, is he Australian or not. Doesn't actually say where he's born, but yeah, I feel like he might be an Aussie. 100%, could be wrong with that. So if anyone knows, hit us up. So Jack, I reckon that's the end of the show, mate.
Yeah, no, good one, long one. So, but if you're still listening, thank you very much. Yeah, you've clearly been entertained.
Yeah, and the beauty of the pod is just pause it if you need a break, and then come back to it after. But I think everyone, thank you again for listening to today's episode and enjoying Mason's new quality of audio. That is put out.
Excited to hear it.
Yeah, hopefully it's good. But again, guys, make sure you follow Jack where and what.
Jack_Mason 22 and Jackie Boys 22 on
TikTok. And me will be Cutts on all forms of social media. Have a look at us on our website at screenblend.net and follow us on all forms of social media also at Screenblend. We'll be drip feeding a little bit more news and stuff regarding through our TikTok accounts and videos. You can get in contact with us there. And yeah, again, thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed our chat regarding Fast and the Furious. Give us some comments regarding that on our social media platforms. But anything to sign off with, Jack, or is that the end of today's episode?
That is the end. Thank you for listening. Stay safe again, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys. Ta-da.
Bye.